chapter 6, Sankhya Yoga, and I'm going to read text number 41. Prapya punya kritam lokam ushasva shasiti sama suchinam shimatam gehe yoga prashta vijayate. Translation purport by His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Prabhupada's purport: the unsuccessful yogis are divided into two classes. One has fallen after very little progress, and one has fallen after long practice of yoga. The yogi who falls after a short period of practice goes to the higher planets, where pious living entities are allowed to enter. After prolonged life there, one is sent back again to this planet to take birth in the family of a righteous Brahmana, Vaishnava, or an aristocratic merchants. The real purpose of yoga practice is to achieve the highest perfection of Krishna consciousness, as explained in the last verse of this chapter. For those who do not persevere to such an extent, and who fail because of material allurements, are allowed by the grace of the Lord to make full utilization of their material propensities. And after that, they are given opportunities to live prosperous lives in righteous, aristocratic families. Those who are born in such families, they take advantage of the facilities and try to elevate themselves to full Krishna consciousness. So the verse again: Prapya punya kritam lokam ushasva shasiti samak suchinam shimatam gehe yoga brashta vijayate. The unsuccessful yogi, after many years of enjoyment on the planets of the pious living entities, is born into a family of righteous people or into a family of rich aristocracy. Of course, we can include within this the next verse, where Krishna further elaborates about the unsuccessful yogi, where he says, Ataiva yogina chaiva kule bhavati dimatam etadi dur bhatalam local janmadi idrisham. That if he's more advanced, then he takes birth in a family of transcendentalists, for surely great in wisdom. Surely such a birth is rare in this world. This material universe is a school for all of us. Just like in school, sometimes the student, he's a very good student and he makes progress. And sometimes the student is not very attentive in the class and he gets demoted, or sometimes he has to repeat the same class again. Srila Prabhupada was always trying to be encouraging, and therefore he'd always put things in such a way that we'd understand that whatever we could do, we were going to get fantastic benefit. Which is true. But on the other hand, sometimes it makes people lazy and they think I've already put my effort in, and therefore there's no need to put too much more of an effort into my devotional service because I'm already going to some elevated place. I already have my ticket to Indraloka. Hopefully it's a one-way ticket. But actually, as it says in the Bible, as we sow, so shall we reap. That everything is taken into account, including our devotional service and our activities on the mundane platform. Still, this process of devotional service is so nice that even though we may not have any pious credits from previous lifetimes, still somehow or another we had enough credit to take to the chanting of the holy names. Now in Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says, Chatur Vida Bhajante Mam, that Chatur Vida Bhajante Mam, Jana Srikritina Arjuna, Arta Jignasya Artharti Kyani Chabharatar Shiva. That 4 kinds of people approach devotional service. Those who are in distress, those who are desiring to have some material comfort, those who are inquisitive, and one who's searching for knowledge of the absolute truth. So these 4 classes of persons or people are considered to be pious. Pious because they agree to accept Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra to some degree or another. And because they accept Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra to some degree or another, they come in contact with the super soul. Although the super soul is always with us, but the super soul, he's reciprocating with us according to our desire. If we desire for material happiness, then he gives us the intelligence by which we can achieve it. Now, material happiness is only really achieved by following Krishna's directions in Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. Still, people may be misled by other types of allurements where the accumulation of women and wealth are promised to be sources of material happiness. Of course, material wealth can only bring us so much either eating or sleeping or mating and defending, which goes in the name of material happiness. It doesn't matter how much money we have, we still can only eat so much. Prabhupada used to say that you may be a multi-billionaire, but you can only eat 4 chapatis. It's not that for every $1 million you have, you get an extra chapati you can eat. As far as sleeping, there's only 24 hours a day. No one can sleep 24 hours, 25 hours, even if you're fabulously rich. And even mating has its limitation. Human form of life is not made for unlimited sex life. And even the most wealthy people die, and sometimes prematurely. Therefore, material comforts are not necessarily expanded as we expand our economic development. Still, most of the distress that people experience is not because, for instance, in the Western world, not because they don't have access to material sense gratification, but they're in anxiety because of the access to material sense gratification. That the desire to engage in unlimited sense gratification is a source of distress. Hankering does not produce happiness. It produces the expectation or the desire for happiness. The result is often less than when imagined. And similarly, after experiencing sense gratification or the lack of it, one becomes disappointed. That's called lamentation. So generally speaking, an intelligent person, they realize after some time, everything they're hankering for, even if they get it, they don't become satisfied with it. And even if they get something and they lose it, well, whatever they get, even if it satisfies them temporarily, they eventually lose it, and that becomes the source of great distress or lamentation. So Srila Prabhupada once said in a lecture that in this material world, we only have 2 occupations, namely hankering for what we don't have, and then lamenting for what we lose. we work hard to get something, but inevitably we have to lose it, and therefore we wind up lamenting that we lost it. Or we wind up in whatever state of life we're in, and we lament we never got what we wanted. We'd like to go back in a time machine and start our lives all over again, because we have so much intelligence now. Certainly we'd make it better. We'd be able to perfect our lives of eating, sleeping, mating, defending, while in this present stage of our life, we just made so many mistakes. Therefore, when one is sufficiently frustrated with materialistic existence, then one may good fortune take to some kind of process of yoga. So yoga begins with karma yoga. Karma yoga begins with trying to regulate the senses. Regulate the senses means to try to follow what Krishna tells us. It may begin, for instance, at the platform of someone who's in the mode of ignorance. He likes eating meat, but the scriptures say that you should not eat the cow or the bull, but you can eat a goat, and you can eat a goat once a month. If you take the goat to a hill where there's no one around, during a time of the month when there's no moon, so no one can see what you're doing, and you whisper into the goat's ear before you cut its throat, "My dear goat, now I'm going to cut your throat." And don't worry, because in your next lifetime or in some future lifetime, you'll also become a human being, and I'll become a goat, and you can cut my throat. How romantic. Then after eating enough goat burgers and chanting this mantra enough times, one suddenly thinks about their future of becoming a goat, all for this goat burger. And one may lose the taste for goat burgers as a result, and decide maybe it's better I eat samosas instead. So this is advancement. One goes from goat burgers to samosas is a great advancement for a materialist. And indeed, by the process of yoga, going from karma yoga, karma kanda, of which the lowest is just, as it says in the Bhagavad Gita, just becoming somewhat religious at the beginning. That there were 4 religious principles, namely no illicit sex, no gambling, no intoxication, and no meat eating. Now, for a common materialist, this is called religion, because we see in modern society, there are religions who don't actually follow their founder. They declare that it's not good to kill children, but they're perfectly fine with killing animals. The definition of illicit sex has been more or less modified, etc., etc. Mental speculation. People don't really believe there's such a thing as mental speculation. They think it's creativity. To accept Shastra, to accept the scriptures, to accept the word of God, you're considered fanatical, a danger to society, a flat earther. But everything outside of Shastra must be considered mental speculation. Now, we may not understand Shastra, but then again, what do we understand? We don't even understand we're not this body clearly enough. In any case, the beginning of human life, or at least attempt to become a human being, is to follow religious principles, which means cleanliness, mercy, truthfulness, and austerity. Now, these things are considered quite outdated. People don't know what cleanliness is. If they, before they eat, if they look at their hands to see whether they're dirty or not. And if there's nothing that's, the previous meal that they ate is still not on their hands, they conclude that everything's all right. There's no use of going to clean their hand because for all intents and purposes, it looks completely in the mode of goodness. Therefore, people have no idea what cleanliness is, either externally or internally. If you told people what internal cleanliness is, they would think you're living in some fairy tale somewhere. Or you must be a Hare Krishna. In any case, these 4 principles of mercy, truthfulness, cleanliness, this is actually elevating those who follow those principles. And therefore, by practicing those principles, one may become qualified for a higher birth in the next lifetime. Therefore, as mentioned in this verse, that those who follow some kind of yoga may go to the higher planetary systems. In the higher planetary systems, there is no one there who doesn't follow these principles: truthfulness, cleanliness, mercy, and austerity. That's what the higher planetary systems, everyone who lives there must follow these principles, or else they're considered to be degraded. Just like Narada Muni, he decided when he was a demigod, when he was there, and demigods are all very attractive, and he was very attractive, and as Prabhupada writes in that particular canto, when he's describing Narada Muni as the demigod, Upabramba, I believe his name was something like that. He was very attractive, and he was surrounded by demigoddesses. But he decided to sing cinema songs. Now, of course, there was no cinema in the heavenly planets, which means that he was singing songs that were glorifying the demigods rather than the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So this was considered to be an offense, because even in the Vedas, where it talks about the demigods, always Om is introduced. They're not seen outside of the relationship to Krishna. Therefore, when Narada Muni as a demigod was advertising by his singing to these ladies that there was something beyond Krishna or outside of Krishna, namely the demigods were on the same level as Krishna, therefore the demigods cursed him, he'd take birth here as a Shudra. In other words, to be eligible to go to the heavenly planets doesn't mean we just chant a few rounds and then Indra comes with his spaceship to take us to heaven. No, we have to actually be qualified to go to heaven. Now, there are two different, as the 4 different pious people, they're divided into 2 different levels. One is karma and the other is jnana. Karma is those who are taking devotional service because of suffering, or they want some higher state of material existence, a more pleasant existence in the material world. So these are the Shudras and the Vaishyas. Certainly the Vaishyas are interested, they know what actual economic development is, and therefore they're seriously engaged in protecting cows and the bulls and simplifying it. They're not involved in all kinds of technology and industrialization, which are all ugra karma. Therefore, because of their simple lifestyle, protecting the cow and the bull, their religious lifestyle, their minds are more peaceful, and therefore they're happier in the material world. The Shudras, because they don't know why they're suffering, but when they get association with the higher classes of people, such as the Vaishyas, or even higher than the Vaishyas, are the Gyanis. Jnanis means those who are hearing Vedic knowledge from, Jignasu, those who are inquisitive. Now, no one can actually be steadily inquisitive unless one hears actual Vedic knowledge, because only the Vedas can tell us reality and therefore bring us to a higher state of consciousness. We may be inquisitive about something of the material world, like who won the football game or who's going to win the next election, whatever. There is a kind of inquisitiveness amongst the animals also. As I've said many times, even the birds are inquiring, beep, beep, where's the worm? Another learned bird is replying, beep, 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 the worm is over there. So you learn another language now. The animal languages are much simpler than ours. So there is a kind of inquisitiveness. All of the entities are inquisitive, but generally speaking, except for those who want elevation in consciousness, most of the inquisitiveness is about how to eat, how to sleep, how to mate, and how to defend. Therefore, it's not concluded or it's not explained that the Shudras and the Vaishyas are actually inquisitive, because their basic aim of life is how to better eat, sleep, mate, and defend by using the Vedic knowledge. But ultimately, their purpose of life is the same as everyone else's, how to have a better material existence. Now, when one has a good existence, for instance, a happy family life, like a good example is Nanda Maharaj and Mother Yasoda. They're their ideal family life. They were protecting cows and the bulls. There was no industry. We don't find Mother Yasoda getting a job to support the family in Vrindavan. She was contented with churning butter. The gopis were making garlands, cooking for Krishna. And Nanda Maharaj was content having his son go out and herd the cows, and they ate the grass of Vrindavan. There was no clearing of the Kalpavriksha trees in Vrindavan to make room for the increase of the herd so they can do more animal slaughter. There's no such thing in Vrindavan. There's no, in other words, what's been going on eternally is the same in Vrindavan, namely simple living, enjoying life by being Krishna conscious and maintaining oneself or the family by protecting cows and taking care of the land to produce nice food. When the food is nutritious, especially when it's spiritual, then the mind becomes peaceful and satisfied, because the highest enjoyment is nice food, nice family life, peaceful life. So this is in the realm of karma kanda, but when one is satisfied by good association with the Brahmins, if there are Brahmins, then the Brahmins can tell those who are qualified about the higher planetary systems, about a better life of Krishna consciousness, because to go to the higher planetary systems depends upon becoming conscious of Krishna, following the Brahmins towards liberation. In other words, decreasing one's sense gratification and increasing one's desire to serve the Supreme Lord. Even on the battlefield, to fight for religious principles is actually quite a test. Now, fighting in religious principle doesn't mean necessarily you have to kill someone, and then you can show how religious you are. But also the Sankirtan movement is also fighting for religious principles. And it requires courage and belief in Krishna in order to fight, to spread the Krishna consciousness movement. Now, we may not be killing anyone. Everyone dies anyhow. We don't have to be in a hurry of killing everyone because everyone's going to die anyhow. But we want to kill the demoniac mentality. So how to do that? One has to be inquisitive, and one has to learn from the Guru, Sadhu, and Shastra. And when one becomes fully engaged in devotional service, Mam chayo vyavicharena bhakti yogina sevate sagunan samitithaitam brahma bhuyaga kalpate. So when one becomes fully engaged in devotional service and failing in all circumstances, one comes to the realization of Brahman. In other words, in our practice of Krishna consciousness, by the mercy of Srila Prabhupada and our acharyas, we may be on different levels of practice. Some of us may be practicing devotional service because it promises us relief from our distress. Others may practice it because it convinces us how to simplify our life and what the real values of life are, what the valuable things in life are. Now, of course, the devotees know about prasadam. Sometimes they don't know what healthy prasadam is, or even tasty prasadam is. But that's necessary to even know either healthy, nutritious. Healthy doesn't mean it's bland, like a microbiotic diet where you get brown rice every day. No, healthy means nutritious, that we can actually digest and actually enlivens, as Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, that it's satisfying, it's nutritious, it's fatty, it's juicy, etc., etc. That's considered to be food in the mode of goodness. Now, those who are on that level, if that's all they've achieved, that sometimes they go to the heavenly planets. And then they come back again. But generally speaking, because they haven't really been so inquisitive about devotional service, they take birth in a quote, wealthy family. Because nowadays, wealthy means, according to the Vedic conception, a Vaishya family like that of in Vrindavan, where they have cows and land. Nowadays, wealthy means you take birth in a place, in a family where they have a lot of external resources, like paper money or something. That theoretically they have wealth, although they may lose it at any time. And for those who have actually become inquisitive, those who are actually studying the Shastra, those who are actually trying to fix their minds in Krishna consciousness, understand how everyone and everything is related to Krishna. They may go to the heavenly planets for some time, and they take birth in a Brahminical family. Because where are the Brahminical families nowadays? Where are the actually wealthy people taking care of the land and the cows? Where are the Brahminical families? They don't exist. Therefore, this expectation that let me go to the heavenly planets, if I don't make it in this lifetime, at least I get the consolation prize. I go to the heavenly planets and then take birth in a wealthy or a learned family. We shouldn't count on that so much in Kali Yuga. And what to speak of the next one, Ataiva yoginam eva kule bhavati dhimatam. That after long practice of yoga, which means that one is practically on the liberated platform, one has become convinced there's no use of economic development. Well, there is use of economic development, but economic development should be to a sattvic lifestyle. And one's inquisitiveness is satisfied because one is convinced that Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and I should practice devotional service to become conscious of him for no other reason than to increase my consciousness of Krishna. Then one may take birth in the family of transcendentalists. But even that's quite rare. I mean, even our devotee families, we can see sometimes the devotees are very much influenced, at least for now, by the external world. Because the external world is quite intense in Kali Yuga, especially at this time, when Kali Yuga has advanced so much that even the idea of simple living and high thinking has become more or less, if not criticized, it's become minimized as something utopian. Therefore, even the devotees sometimes have to struggle in household life to maintain the principles and to keep the seriousness in Krishna consciousness. But instead of looking forward to our next life in the heavenly planets, or even have to hopefully taking birth in the family of devotees, we have to become serious now about practicing Krishna consciousness. Because that's our only hope, either to advance as to get free, to satisfy our desires for a comfortable life, a happy life in this world, or a happy life in a higher planetary system in the next lifetime. Even to satisfy those desires, we have to seriously take to Krishna consciousness. And that means we've been offered in Kali Yuga the chanting of Hare Krishna. We have to take that as seriously as possible. And the process of devotional service, which means a 24-hour-a-day program, so that we can actually perfect or advance our chanting of the holy names. As it says in the Bhagavatam, Aho bhata swapacho to garyan, yejivadgre vartate namatu abhyam, tapustapaste juhavu shasna arya, brahmanuchara nama grinanti yete. That how glorious are those whose tongues are chanting a holy name. Even if born in the family of dog eaters, such persons are worshipable. Persons who chant the holy name of your Lordship must have executed all kinds of austerities and fire sacrifices and achieved all the good manners of the Aryans. To be chanting the holy name of your Lordship, they must have bathed at holy places of pilgrimage, studied the Vedas, and fulfilled everything required. Now, if we think I'm chanting the holy name, this describes me. Every day I'm chanting shnik shnik ram ram day 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 hey kitty kitty hey kitty kitty. So this means that I've bathed in all the holy places, that I did all the fire sacrifices, and I have all the good manners of the Aryans, studied the Vedas intensely, and fulfilled everything required. Not necessarily. But somehow or another, we've come in contact with the holy name by Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's mercy of sending Srila Prabhupada, and by the influence of a Mahabhagavat, people who are somewhat pious, had some medasa, as it says, yanti hi sumedasa, Krishna varnam tvisa Krishna, sango pangasya parshadam, jagnai sankirtana prayar, yanti hi sumedasa. That in this age, where people are not pious by birth. By birth, we weren't meditators. Our parents didn't teach us how to meditate on Paramatma within the heart since our birth, like they did in Satya Yuga. Nor were we asked to sacrifice everything for the sake of the Supreme Personality of Godhead and dedicate ourselves as monks from the beginning of our birth. Nor did we go to the temple or church and worship God intently, sacrificing all our energies in the worship of the Supreme Lord. No, most of us were not informed about the existence of God who he was, or who he is, what he does, who we are. Even we were born in a so-called religious family, but the basic principles of religion are hardly followed in Kali Yuga, and what to speak of having any knowledge behind the religion. The knowledge of the eternality of the self, of the soul, or the existence of Paramatma within the heart, or the existence of the Supreme Lord in the spiritual planet beyond this material universe. These things are not instructed, but by the grace of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he sent his emissary, Srila Prabhupada, around the world to introduce this philosophy and this practice to raise us from wherever we were to a higher and higher levels of consciousness, so that our anxieties can be satisfied, we can live in, have a peaceful mind, we can have a peaceful mind enough to hear real knowledge, become convinced of our eternality, and therefore be satisfied in any circumstance and simply fix our minds upon Krishna to achieve the highest goal of life. So this is what's being offered to us, especially through the chanting of the holy names. But we also have to take advantage of the other gifts that Srila Prabhupada gave us, namely hearing the philosophy, so that we can have a peaceful mind. And whatever our circumstances, to know that this is due to my past karma, it's not happening by chance, it is not that God doesn't love me, he's forgotten me. I'm left to myself to figure out what to do, how to solve the problems of material existence. That I should have been born on a heavenly planet, but somehow or another I took birth on this planet in Kali Yuga unjustly. No, be satisfied in whatever circumstance and utilize the gifts that Krishna is giving us to get out of the material existence into spiritual existence, even in this lifetime. The books, the philosophy, the deity worship, the service of the devotees, the holy places and the temples that we get the chance to live and visit, that these are opportunities so we can perfect our chanting of the holy names in Kali Yuga. And all it requires is an acceptance that the holy name and Krishna are non-different, and that Krishna is the all-attractive Supreme Personality of Godhead. The holy name has unlimited beauty, he has unlimited wealth, unlimited strength, unlimited fame, unlimited knowledge, unlimited renunciation. Now we may chant Hare Krishna, and he may not give us unlimited wealth. He may not give us unlimited beauty. He may not give us unlimited strength. That doesn't mean that the holy name doesn't have it. Just because he's not giving it to us doesn't mean he doesn't have it itself. Or that the holy name, how could it be Krishna himself? Because if it was Krishna himself, he would fulfill all my desires. Namely, he should reciprocate with me, and whatever wealth and fame, and whatever else I desire, he should immediately give me. Because after all, I'm doing him a favor by chanting his name. But that's not exactly how the process works. It may be a fact that Krishna, first of all, Krishna has given us a lifestyle far surpassing a materialist. At least theoretically, we know we're eternal. Well, most people, how can they be peaceful or happy when they're simply performing sinful activities and thinking that at the end, they have no idea what's going to happen to them? They have no idea why they're suffering at the present time. Their only recourse, for the most part, is to take intoxication. As one devotee was telling me, he lives in the country where they grow grapes. And he said that everyone there is either taking pills or drinking 2 liters of wine a day. So that's Kali Yuga. People have no idea why they're suffering, and the only remedy they have is to cover it with something like intoxication. So that's very unfortunate, because intoxication doesn't really solve the problem. It actually makes it worse. For instance, we can see that there's a lot of ants, because this year the ants haven't come to visit me yet. Usually during the summer, I get visitation from a few dynasties of ants in my room. Even though there's nothing to eat for them, still they like to visit. Maybe some of them, maybe they crawl over the books or something, and they get a little association with Prabhupada through his books. This year they haven't come. But one of the things about ants that's quite obvious is that they're always intoxicated. That's their real aim of life, is to get intoxication. If they can find one grain of sugar, for them it's a mountain. It's enough for them to take home and have the whole family share for a few weeks. But what's the business of an ant? It simply runs around after it eats the sugar and gets intoxicated. It simply runs around in circles until the sugar runs out, and then it has to go out and work to find another grain of sugar, or maybe a mahasweet if it's super pious. Therefore, this idea that somehow or another we can cover over the miseries of Kali Yuga by some way other than Krishna consciousness is actually rather, it's just wrong. The only remedy for the problems we have in Kali Yuga, either to get rid of our miseries or to make ourselves peaceful and have an actual healthy life, or to even satisfy our inquisitiveness about how to solve our problems permanently, that this is only possible through Krishna consciousness. And everything that we have, although in itself may help us remember Krishna, but it's in this age is perfected through the chanting of the holy names. Therefore, we should take the chanting very seriously. On the other hand, if we have problems chanting, if we can't chant purely, offenselessly, which is what's described in that verse, then we have to also simultaneously take shelter of the morning and evening program that Srila Prabhupada gave all of us. Prabhupada didn't give this program of rising, quote, early, whatever that may mean. Generally, it means at least before the sun gets up. The sun's working 24 hours a day, and still it gets up in the morning at the same time, more or less the same time. The sun never gets up later than the sun gets up, if you understand what I mean. The sun is always rising at the proper time. Whenever the sun rises, the sun god is there too. So we should get up before the sun rises. And the morning program, we don't have to be in a temple to chant Hare Krishna. It's not that Krishna is only in the temple, and he's everywhere. So to chant Hare Krishna, and we can have a picture of the deities. We don't need an elaborate, Radha Krishna deities with all the Astasakis and the Panchatattva to worship the deities. Krishna is there in the picture also. He's just as much Krishna in the picture as he is in the deities. So we should worship the deities in the morning. If we have, of course, we have little deities, and we can offer some service to them, like offering them some water and some prasadam. And at the same time, we should hear about Krishna. Every morning, the family should get together and hear Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita. It doesn't hurt. No one will die to find out that they're eternal and that Krishna is God. It's not so painful. We can tolerate that much. Let Krishna be God, and let me be eternal. It's all right. It's not so horrible. and to have a holy place, at least in our house, where we keep it clean, and we offer something to the deities there. And to try and serve the devotees, even if it's my wife or my husband or the children, or even if the dog is there. If he gets prasadam every day and he hears the chanting, he's a kind of devotee too. So we don't recommend keeping a dog. In any case, if you happen to have, for one reason or another, have a dog or a parakeet or whatever, and offer them some prasadam. In any case, we don't need an elaborate arrangement. We don't have to save the whole world. We should just try to save our wife or children or our husband, get together and chant to each other, talk about Krishna to each other, instead of how horrible the neighbors are, or how to get more money so we can expand our kingdom. So talk about Krishna. Don't worry about anything. Because at the end, the only thing that really counts in our relationships and our own existence is how much we're Krishna conscious. Then we can live happily in Krishna's service, because if we please Krishna, then Krishna will make sure that we have a peaceful life, and we even get his association and experience the love and the ecstasy when Krishna reveals himself to us, when he's pleased by our endeavors to serve him in some way. But especially those who are householders who don't live near the temple, we should be very careful not to think that Krishna is not here, and therefore it doesn't really matter what I do because he's not looking. He's in the temple, he's far away. And therefore it doesn't matter how I treat my husband or my wife or my children, or even those who are my animals, because in the Bhagavatam it said that these devotees, like Parikshit Maharaj and Maharaj Yudhisthira, they took care of their animals too. They took care of everyone. Like when Krishna did the Govardhan Puja, he had everyone fed, even the dogs were fed prasadam. Everyone was looked after because everyone is Krishna's servant. So that a householder, even he has a spider in his house, he makes sure that the spider gets fed, because he doesn't offer flies to Krishna and then give it to the spider. But he makes sure that even the spiders are taken care of. He doesn't get out his cat and ray and say, my dear spider, this house is not big enough for the two of us. Sorry, you got to go. Oh, he's even merciful to the insects. He sees everyone as Krishna's servant, and therefore he can make progress in chanting the holy names. So we shouldn't be unhappy, we shouldn't be discouraged. We should understand that we have these 5 principles: chanting the holy name, hearing Srimad Bhagavatam, Bhagavad Gita, worshiping the deities, serving the devotees, and living in a holy place, making our place holy, and preaching to each other and to others about Krishna. That these 5 things we can have anywhere, practically speaking. Dhruva Maharaj, he was out in the middle of Vrindavan when it was a jungle. There was no question of importing or buying deities from Loy Bazaar. There was no Loy Bazaar. He made a deity out of mud. Similarly, even the gopis, they made a deity of Katyayani to worship Katyayani, to get Krishna as their husband. They did it from mud. They didn't order something from Amazon, a deity from Amazon, and started the worship when it came. We don't need a gorgeous, elaborate arrangement to serve Krishna. We just need a little sincerity to try to please him. And if we have that, then Prabhupada and Krishna has given us all the opportunities now, at this time, in any circumstance, to go on with our Krishna consciousness and make our lives successful in this lifetime. And if we try like that, then we don't have to worry about, whether we come back in a Brahmin family or a rich mercantile family, we come back in a devotee family. Krishna will take care of that. If we try sincerely to make our lives Krishna conscious, then Krishna will make sure we have an opportunity in our next lifetime, continue on with the same process, no matter what family we're born into. No matter what state of Kali Yuga we happen to manifest ourselves again in. Or we might even go back to the spiritual world, who knows? So I'll stop there. Thank you. Any questions or comments? Here, a dark image. Yeah, that's interesting. Shows a dark image. Let's see if we move this around. No idea.
Guru Maharaj, excuse me. It's in your camera. It's something is dark.
Yeah, it's my light here. There we go.
Okay, it's better. Thank you, Guru Maharaj.
Let's see if we move it back there. Oh. All right. We solved that problem. Any other problems? That was the problem. That was the one problem we solved today. Anyone else have any questions?
Hare Krishna, dear Guru Maharaj. Krishna Chandra Das. I will say in Russia. Вы знаете, Гуру Махарадж, сейчас у меня муравьев комнату в стулисе, и я просто в замешательстве, я не знаю, ну, нужно ли как-то избавляться от них, но их очень много. Прямо, простите, да, что такой вопрос, но так совпало, поэтому я его задаю.
Krishna Tattva Prabhu said that he has enormous amounts of ants who are coming into his tulsi room, and he's really, he's overwhelmed now. When you said to be merciful to the spiders and everyone, what to do?
Buy an anteater.
I'm sorry. He said there is a.
It's an animal called an anteater. Anteater. It's an animal.
Oh, okay. Understand.
And if you can't buy an anteater, then there are other remedies to keep the ants out. I think there's certain types of powder you can buy that discourages the ants from coming in. In any case, if they're attacking Tulsi, then they're aggressors against a pure devotee. You have to do the necessary. Like, for instance, put Tulsi in a pot of water underneath Tulsi, so any ant that wants to go and attack her will drown. That's the reaction for attacking a pure devotee. But anyhow, you have to protect Tulsi somewhere or another. As far as the ants go, they don't usually eat very much. So I wouldn't feed them, but unless they're doing some really destructive work, I wouldn't kill any of them unnecessarily. On the other hand, there are methods of getting rid of them too, of discouraging them. Like, for instance, finding out where they're coming in from and putting an obstacle in their path. And sometimes it doesn't work, whatever. But in any case, it's not a good idea to kill any living entity unnecessarily. Thank you. Any other questions? I'd like to ask, what is wrong with the idea to earn more Lakshmi so that one can help increase or start some new projects for the temple, like increased prasadam distribution or printing new Srila Prabhupada's books, etc. Oh, there's nothing wrong with that. But we shouldn't at the same time neglect our sadhana, and with the idea that I'm giving up my devotional service in order to save the temple or distribute more prasadam. Prabhupada said that In the material world, the idea of welfare work is quite prominent. Feeding the poor, like the Salvation Army or other groups, they're given great respect. But even better than that, come in. Even better than that, even more important than that, is to realize the self. And even more important than realizing the self, to help others realize the self, to spread Krishna consciousness, is to save one's own self. So yes, making more money is good if that's our talent and our ambition, but we should know that our real business is not just to spread prasadam or print Prabhupada's books, is to become Krishna conscious ourselves. So in order to do that, we have to be careful that we do what's necessary to chant defenselessly, to have time to study Prabhupada's books, to relate to our family in a Krishna conscious way, and to have some worshiping of the deity every day, offer prasadam to the deity, chant before the deity, etc. Fix our minds on Krishna. Anything else? Just have to take something.
Maharaj, is it okay? I mean, we the oysters we are allowed to eat an oyster?
You want to eat oysters?
Like oyster, is it like in the evolutionary? It's less than plants. So are we allowed to eat it? Is it a
You
living
think
entity?
oysters are less than plants? If I was an oyster, I'd be insulted.
Again, what?
Where do you find it? Where do you find out that oysters are less than plants?
Because fishes are below the trees. So if anything grows in the water, I think it's less than trees.
Well, in Shastra, it doesn't exactly say that.
But
There is a point in Shastra, Shastra may see things from different points of view, which may explain sometimes that on the evolutionary platform, fish may be less than plants in terms of development, but we don't offer fish or anything else to Krishna. We only offer to Krishna plants and milk and flowers and things like that. We don't, because we're not vegetarians, we're Krishnarians. Therefore, we only eat what Krishna asks us to offer to him. And he definitely doesn't want us to offer oysters.
Okay, I thought since it's seafood, maybe. Okay, thank you, Maharaj.
Yeah, well, there's a class of people in Bengal, they think fish is the fruit of the sea, but we don't think like that.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavad Gita Ki Jai, Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai, Gaur Premanande Hari Bol.